Do you want me to sing the theme music to bring you in?
It really does get me going when I hear it. I'm like, yes.
It does.
Oh my God, I heard like a 311 song the other day, and I was like, oh my God, have I come full circle and like don't hate 311 as much as I always have?
I think I had my license for like a day and I left my keys in the car at the 311
Jesus.
concert. Show. It was a show. It was before 311 when it was 311 at Michael's on 8th up in Glen
Oh,
Burnie.
Michael's Eighth Avenue was the shit.
I had
God,
to
I
come full
forgot about that
circle.
venue.
Right? That was the spot when we were growing up.
We could have been at that same show because I think I saw my first, we'll call it a concert there, because it was Jimmy's Chicken Shack, Shooty's Groove, and 311. I'm gonna be fucking been there with you. We both just
We
don't
might have gone
remember.
together. This sounds so familiar.
I saw Tribe there and did a bunch of cocaine, and then the next day my sister had her wedding there, and I did the rest of the cocaine in the same stall, and I was like, "What is wrong with me?" Sorry,
Can we?
sis.
That's fucking hilarious. Start the podcast with this. David's sobriety journey, starting with
Really,
Glen
starting
Burnie,
with
the
the one up
90s.
is Michael's Eighth Avenue. Ooh-wee.
That's probably our intro, our cold open.
Oh, sorry. Are you starting?
I'm starting. I'm
Okay.
jumping right in.
Can I pee real quick? I'm so sorry. I'm the worst. Like 2 seconds. Hold on. I think I might have ADHD. I've been thinking about this a lot.
I feel like this podcast is going to have ADHD because we've done these beautiful interviews. Then I think, oh, maybe it's just a talk show with David and I just talking about random shit.
It's like we're really good about some random popcorn thought and both having a lot to say about it.
Maybe that's season 2.
Oh my God.
I love that we've kickstarted this conversation, taking it back to the 90s and 311, because that's where I want to kick off this intro episode, David. So people are like, who are Piper and David? Why are they qualified to interview rappers, National Geographic photographers, filmmakers, contemporary artists, like this amazing roster of people that we have on tap for season 1. So we're going to tell y'all, you've done some really amazing things. And I really love your journey. I love that I've known you for so many years, since we were 15, basically, and grew up down the street from each other. And this was like back in the 90s. So 30 some odd years, and seeing your trajectory, your transformation. You went from playing Warped Tour, basically as a teenager, in a band some of you listeners may lovingly remember as Geppetto in Maryland, to becoming basically a cornerstone of the queer club scene in San Francisco. What actually happened in between? Like, what did that transition even feel like?
I mean, I think the amount of my internal transformation during that time was major. I came out, number one. I'm homosexual, for those who did not know this.
I'm homosexual.
So that was obviously huge. I also got a second DUI and was facing charges, and I got sober. So I just celebrated 20 years. At that time, without really recognizing it, I needed to be around people that were examples of a life that I wanted to live. I mean, Chris and I, who used to, was the other friend in Geppetto, we basically were like, let's move cross country and go tour on that coast. That was the impetus for going to San Francisco. Chris was pretty much there 5 days out of the entire 2 years we lived together. So I immediately was like faced with some of the biggest fears of like being 3,000 miles away from people that I know. But it actually set the stage for being able to embrace those fears, right? I learned how to be really happy with a bike and a shitty sushi job, and like making music. Nobody knew who I was there. And so really being able to work on art in a very selfless way, like pouring myself into it because I didn't know what else to do. I mean, I made my first solo record that I never put out. I put together this project, which is basically sampling a bunch of sounds and playing electronic drums over it during the days of Girl Talk. And so, it was really just a chance to explore and put my head down and figure out who I was internally. So to answer your question, it kind of felt like a rebirth because I also met Krylon within my first year of being there, and then we started Double Duchess. And so Double Duchess was like an intro to queer community in San Francisco, which then led to Swagger, which led to kind of more of a bigger presence in some ways.
That makes so much sense. Needing to surround yourself with more examples of the kind of life that you wanted to live, which sounds like you were not finding in Maryland. And then what an interesting experience to go from being very known to being completely unknown. And then being known again because your involvement with Double Duchess in the queer community and in music making leading to Swagger Like Us and Molly House Records. What's interesting there is everything that you've built, really zooming out, has been for a community.
Mm-hmm.
Building a label, building a regular party like Swagger Like Us, it's a lot of work to do for other people. Where does that come from for you?
I don't think that it comes from this intention of like, I want to build community. I think it really comes from wanting to do the work for the right reasons. Like we both went to that Turnstile show that happened last year that like everybody heard about and it was like amazing. And for me, it was an opportunity to see fully removed a community that was being really celebrated. Like one of my closest friends, Darren, here, going with Darren and Darren telling me about how that was her 15 to like 18-year-old experience coming to see Geppetto. And then I saw her sort of participate in that Turnstile crowd. And it was just like, oh, there was a lot of community, but it's really hard to see when you're in it. My first project was so much about trying to understand myself in the world. And it was a vehicle with people who a lot of people just felt similarly, kind of angsty and like very fuck the man. It was like 90s and we were in Annapolis, which is kind of small and like, you know what I mean? It had that energy. And then I think cut to Double Duchess, kind of putting queer on its head before a lot of people, I think, visibly were. So we weren't the stereotypical like gay scene that you see in like WeHo or Castro, but it was way more like just incorporating a lot of queer culture. And I think that's because that's just who we felt. I mean, this was obviously before Cry had even transitioned. So we both had this internal, like, I don't really belong here, but I am part of this community. So we're going to kind of make that stamp. When Swagger Like Us started, I had just finished my BA, and a lot of that work was about understanding that serving a community that I felt passionate towards and like that I could have a seat at the table just because of my privilege gave me the opportunity to want to like put my work and my efforts in building a safe space for those people. So it became not about me at all. And that was sort of the evolution where I think the first project was like me figuring myself out. The last project, as of now, Swagger Like Us, was more about like me knowing who I am and knowing like it wasn't about me anymore. It was about how can I dump this into serving other people.
And taking that, well, I don't want to say to like a professional level, but as a professional service to other artists, like with Molly House Records.
Yeah, Molly House was basically an extension of that. It was like, how can we use the infrastructure and financial resources that Swagger kind of had at that time to be able to fund and lift up other people further? I think that was coming from having been artists who had to kind of pave our own lanes for the longest time, like mainly through Double Dutch's experience, but sharing that experience with other artists too. A lot of labels, even still to this day, need you to have these certain amount of numbers before they'll even talk to you. And so there's not a lot of development anymore. And I think knowing that Molly House was the opportunity to at least jumpstart for some people like their first release and really get them out. I always have like a credit in Molly House releases. Like I'd always on some level offered some production. Like it was either a track that I worked on and collaborated with somebody, and I always wanted that involvement with the label. Just to be clear, I didn't like produce everything that's on the label, Some people handed me a record and I loved it and I was like, let's do it.
You put out some of your own music on Molly House as well, right?
Mm-hmm. I started Molly House as a way to have that personal home for the work that I had been doing as a producer, as a collaborator, you know?
With the shadowboxing in 2019, you had described it as coming out of a really hard year of kind of taking yourself apart, your music, what you like about making music. What do you actually do with yourself when the thing that you've built, the identity, the project, I don't want to say the scene, but maybe the scene, when it kind of stops fitting 100%?
When I started writing music that felt not quite on the nose with Double Duchess or Swagger, stuff that I would DJing at Swagger and that sort of scene, it was more of like me refining who I was. I think I got a little bit lost in the identity of what Swagger was. And there's a part of me that wasn't me. And part of it was growth. Part of it was like Kelly and I would always say, like, nightlife stays the same age, but we don't. And so I wanted stuff that was a bit more refined as I think I was starting to refine myself. We talked about that with Kim, where it's like there's an expectation to recreate the same thing because that's where you've gotten some traction, right? So you're like, oh, people know me as this person. My biggest identities have been in these projects. And so I feel like I need to keep this going. And that started to feel, I didn't like the way that felt for myself. I also think I'd started to really like do more work around codependency and boundaries. And so it felt like an emotional release in a way that the other projects, the other stuff I'd worked on felt more of like a party, like, oh yeah, everything's amazing. Like, you know, it had that energy. And some of the other stuff was a bit moodier. And that's kind of how I feel internally often. Like I always say my resting mood is kind of melancholy. And like that's, you know, like I love weird Radiohead and Portishead and that moody electronic James Blake sort of energy. I just wanted to make more of that because that's where I was leaning to.
What did you say? My resting phase is melancholy. My resting what?
Like my resting mood.
My resting mood is melancholy. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. Like you've had 20 years of sobriety, and then in the middle of the pandemic, you decided to become a substance abuse counselor. Not a light thing. Oh, like work
Sure.
specifically geared towards people whose resting mood is deep or melancholy that
For
can
sure.
do that inner work and hold that kind of space. What happened in 2020 that made you make that shift to do this kind of work? It's such a departure from music.
There was always a part of me that wanted to be a therapist. Even when I went back to school and I finished my bachelor's, everything I had been working on creatively was starting to take off. Double Duchess was touring, Swagger was starting to thrive. So I put it on pause, but it's always been in the back of my mind. I have a sister who was a paranoid schizophrenic, and so I grew up with mental illness in my household. There were intense moments like in high school and middle school for me. And so there's that part. And the other part is the reality of my business of event production ended overnight because of COVID. And so
Yeah.
by the end of 2020, once I got government assistance, basically, I had a little breathing room and I finished another EP that I ended up putting out called Exhaustible, which I think is like one of my favorite things I've ever done. I also had this question of like what's next, and I think it felt like I had a lot more room to think about that more so than what's next in my lane. It was like what's next for life, I think, because it felt so big at the time because of the pandemic. And I think what I realized, like I started having a little bit of anxiety around certain things that I just weren't too excited about coming back online. And a lot of it was really the parties, you know, like I'll always want to know who's the next girl, who's up and coming, who's doing what. But I think when your job depends upon it, there's some stress there. And there's parts of throwing parties that I didn't love anymore. And even DJing, like part of me just wanted to DJ whatever I wanted to. I was getting a little bit more refined. And
Yeah.
so I think the stuff I wanted to hold on to always is always making music and being creative in that aspect. But the reality is like that made me the least amount of money. And right before that, I finally got a publishing deal and a licensing and sync deal with Terrorbird. So for my first time, I actually had representation, and yet I just kind of needed some stability. And I think With substance abuse, I literally had a friend told me this is the quickest route to doing therapist kind of work. So I took some courses online, and in a year, I had a job working as a case manager in LA. And I think this links back to the first question you asked me, where a lot of that internal work from Geppetto ending and me picking back up in San Francisco 7 years later is stuff that I talk about now. I wasn't necessarily sharing all that stuff. I mean, you share a lot about that stuff with people on their recovery journey, anyways, but to be able to offer that feels very experiential. I can relate to people effortlessly. I think it reads pretty authentically, and it's just a bigger way of giving back to people. The biggest question coming out of 2020 was, what's the one thing that's going to keep me the most engaged other than music? And I was like, people. I find people endlessly fascinating, especially when they're suffering. It makes me want to lean in. So that's why I felt like it'd be a good fit, at least for a while.
You are definitely a people person. You're a good listener, you're a good conversationalist, you reflect things back in like really meaningful ways. And even your melancholy resting mood, I think makes it really comfortable and inviting for people to share with you. Like you feel like an open door that people can walk through.
Thanks, Boo.
You're welcome. Because when we reconnected, you had come back to Maryland, you'd done your time in San Francisco, you'd done your time then in LA, and that was probably like 15 years or so, and then came back to Maryland, family, change of scene, all of the things. And you were thinking about coaching. At that point, I think I had been doing it for 4 or 5 years. And it was like so great to have you pop up in my inbox like, hey, are you a
Yeah,
coach?
yeah.
I'm in Maryland. Can we hang out?
Yeah, I remember that. I had a lot of questions, and I was so impressed by the presence that you had when we first met. Did you think coaching found you, or did you find it? Or do you feel like you've kind of been this person? Like, how did that relationship start for you?
I feel like I've always been a coach. I just didn't know what that was, or I didn't have the skill set for it. I've always been this person in more creative business contexts that people are like, oh, you seem to have this figured out. How do I do X or how do I do Z? And I would like give them, well, here's what I did. I don't know if it's the right way to do it. I'm just out here doing the thing. That happened a lot when I started my photography business when I was like 26 or 7. And then that continued to happen as I formed this nonprofit with my husband. All along, I was always so surprised about who was asking me these questions. I'm like, you're a badass. Why are you trusting your own decisions or direction on these topics? I know that confidence is 90% of it. It's 90% of putting people at ease, whether they're people that want to collaborate with you or your customers or clients or whatever. And just that ease alone can make things go smoothly, even if you have no idea what the fuck you're doing. And I'm like, man, there's got to be a way I can bottle this up and help people have that confidence. And a friend of mine who we interview on this podcast, Gingy Frazier, she was like, oh, that's what a coach does. I was like, oh, maybe I should do
That's
that.
interesting.
Because like I have a lot of natural confidence, even some things that I'm not 100% confident about. I'm a good actor. Like I loved theater growing up because there's a million and 10 ways to do any one thing. So who's to say my way is the right way or this? Like just do it and be confident that that's the name of this podcast, right? Like you're absolutely sure this is the direction that I'm going in. I have no idea what I'm doing or how I'm going to make it happen, but here we go. You kind of got to be a little delusional on an unconventional path because you don't have very many examples around you, or it's not 100% what you would do or how you would do it. So you kind of pick out, I call them these lighthouse people that are pieces of the puzzle of the vision of your life that you're trying to create until you look back and you're like, oh shit, I did the thing. I made it happen. And if I can do anything in this world, it's exude that and convince other people that they have it too. for long enough that they start to actually believe it for themselves and do the damn thing.
I love that. You had done a lot of work as a photographer and you became like the it girl for LGBTQ weddings in the DMV, which we love.
Yes.
And starting the tool library, you had decided to pour yourself into those things. How did the drive start and how did you flip it into like, this is a thing now? Does that
Yeah,
make sense?
because they're not totally related. So
Sure.
I think about that a lot. Like with photography, I went to an art school for college and I pretty much designed my own major. There was like a lot of video installation artists in the contemporary art world that were becoming really popular at the time, like Pippilotti Reese. She was doing this crazy feminist, sort of like nonsensical videos that were projected in these spaces. And I was that's what I want to figure out. I love these built environments and video and storytelling. And so I did some successful projects with amazing groups of people. But then I was like, I don't know how to make a living doing this. I'm just going to go be a ski bum for 6 months and figure it out, which is a theme for me. I escape for these seemingly short-term adventures and fling myself into some like wild situation. My life totally changes. So that was kind of like the first iteration of it. And so I'm like
Yeah.
in this outdoor world around these outdoor seasonal pursuits, mountain biking in the summer to snowboarding 100 days every winter. And I start working in the outdoor industry. And after this 3,000-mile, 3-month bicycle trip through 8 countries in Eastern Europe, I pick up a camera like, man, I want to document this trip. And the company I worked for, because I was using their tents and sleeping bags on the trip, they were like, oh, we want to publish this in our catalog. And when you get back, can you take more photos for us? And I'm like, I don't even, sure, okay. Like, I'll figure this out. They were paying me more for that than to like work at the store. So I'm like, well, maybe I can become a photographer. Like, this could be a real thing. So I decided to move back east and start assisting for other photographers to learn the craft and the trade. And I got hooked up with National Geographic Photo Camps. It was a nonprofit arm of National Geographic to teach photographic storytelling to youth all over the world in at-risk situations. And it was amazing. But I got to basically hone my craft alongside teaching and with National Geographic photographers and built this amazing network. But I always felt siloed in that photography work because you're looking through this box. So your vision zooms in and it's thoughtful work, which is beautiful. And I love, love, love that part of it. And then you take it to the computer and you're zoned in on the computer and you're going through these images and you're crafting these things. And I'm just like, man, I'm lonely. And I was doing wedding work on the side. Gay marriage had just been passed in DC. And somehow, like just through my natural network of people, I became like the unconventional gay wedding photographer. Like, oh, you don't want to wear a white dress? Cool, I'm your gal. But I was lonely. And I started dating my now husband, and he had this idea for a nonprofit, and he needed some business help for it. And like the universe really does come through. Like I just remember sitting at my desk editing photos and being like, I really want to be a part of a meaningful community. And the tool library 100% it became that. So it was like everything was a very natural evolution. Like I put a desire out into the world and a pathway to that made itself available.
That's beautiful. I appreciate the linearness of that too. I think it's nice to hear from one thing leads to the other. What stuck out for me is recognizing that you've had these moments of outdoor reprieve. Something happens and you're kind of like, okay, I'm gonna go and maybe tell me if I'm wrong. It sounds like there's a processing, whether it's unconscious or conscious, but you're like, okay, I'm gonna not think about this, but think about this as I'm sort
Right.
of engaging in this like rigorous activity. I think travel became that for me. Like I'm like, okay, I need a trip. And the trip would just be like processing what was happening in my life. But I also know that you spend some time of your life in a van traveling with foreign countries and I'm curious if was that like elongated version of that or more of like a break? Or did that also sort of change your relationship to what normal life should or
Mm.
shouldn't be? Does that make sense?
That's so interesting. I think it became an extension of what I already thought was normal. My life didn't look like that. Everyone in my family is in aviation. My mom was a flight attendant. My dad and my stepdad were pilots. My grandpa was a pilot. His brother was a pilot. My great grandfather was a pilot. Travel is an exploration. Like my dad was like a NASA test pilot. I mean, it's just like
Crazy.
so embedded in what is normal in my upbringing. And the van trip started because I originally, like, after running a nonprofit with zero prior experience running nonprofits, I realized I had hit a ceiling with what I could bring to the table at the nonprofit. And we had just randomly been building a van for shits and giggles. And I'm like, well, maybe I'll just take the van for like 6 months. And my husband was wanting a break. And it seemed like a natural breaking point for both of us. So it all kind of made sense. Like, okay, let's go have an adventure, take some time for ourselves, figure things out. What we thought would be 6 months turned into almost 3 years. And I think that kind of lifestyle feels very normal to me.
Right.
Yet I came back a different person, realizing that what felt normal didn't feel like home. Like I am actually very much a homebody. What I think travel was for me, or, flinging myself into those experiences, was always looking for home and looking for where I belonged. And what I really learned in that experience was how to create home within me and within the family unit that I've created with John and my dogs. Um, and that was really transformational.
That's funny. I think it's not lost on me that we both met at home. Again, we kind of like reconnected. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I have home here tattooed on my hands, and that was really a period of time where I had learned that because I had been in so many adventures and spaces and projects and things that I never really, I always waited tables or had something to make money, but it never felt like home, right? It was just like money. That my sense of stability, I learned that it was within myself, right? I had to understand that I had to take care of my home, like my being physically, mentally, spiritually, like creatively. And that if that was intact, everything else was just a detail. And I think that's really the ticket. I think it kind of comes back to title of this podcast is like, how
Yes.
can you be absolutely sure that, what this thing is that you want to pursue but have no idea what the details are. And it's because I think it resonates with me, like in my spirit. When everything feels aligned with me, then I'm like, oh, yeah, this is it. And like, we'll figure out the next thing, like, what does absolutely sure no idea like mean to you personally, if you could trace it back to a specific moment, kind of like in your own life?
For me, and this is what the podcast is for me too, is that finding of a sense of inner home, like your inner stability, your inner sense of belonging to yourself is the thing that carries you through the moments of, ups, downs, twists, turns, uncertainty, curveballs, the not knowing, just knowing the general direction. Like that's the thing that smooths out the road, so to speak. It's funny. I will never forget this, and I probably think about it. I might even, oh my God, am I going to cry? David,
Cry,
did you
cry,
make
cry,
me cry?
cry. Just kidding.
This is the intro episode.
It's okay. Set the tone. Let's
Ah,
go.
I think about this every single day. Like on that bicycle trip, I've done like 4 spin classes before setting out on like a 3,000-mile bicycle trip. And I was always a little overweight, always like a little bit of a shadow version of myself. Like I always knew I had this inner power, but I never fully let her out. And man, I got my ass handed to me on that trip. It was the most humbling, awful experience, like day over day. I mean, there's so much magic there too, but it's like you were on a bicycle seat, which is hard and in your crotch for like 10, 12 hours a day, chugging a 60-pound trailer up fucking mountains with zero prior experience. It was so hard. And I had to do it. There was no way for me to even get to an airport because I would have to bike my ass there, right? I did not have a cell phone. I just figured out these whole new depths to my being and capability. And at one point, like 2 months in, we were like in the Czech Republic. And I remember coming around a curve and I saw this sign that had this steep curves ahead type of graphic, you know, where the person is falling off the side of the mountain. And I remember laughing and feeling like a little excited because there was going to be a big climb ahead because I was so strong then. Like I had legs like tree trunks. I had lungs like I don't even know. I was so strong then, and I knew I could do it. And it was like the first time I remember ever feeling like that in my entire life. Like, oh shit, this is a really hard thing in front of me, and I am 100% confident I'm going to crush it. And that was the absolutely sure kind of no idea moment for me. It was like, oh, I can do anything without instructions, like have become that person. And it was a huge, oh, geez, teary. It was like a really important moment in my life.
That's awesome.
Whew. Yeah, I don't know how you close an intro episode after that. But here we are, folks. I mean, those are the kinds of guests that I think we both like really love having in this room and having on this show that have those moments and are willing to share about it and be vulnerable and open about it's not an easy path. And yet we love figuring it out.
I love the opportunity to remind that person how amazing they are and how they continue to thrive. And I love that I get to do that in my work outside of here, being able to highlight people that I think have so much to offer. And I hope it inspires them as much as it inspires all the listeners. We all need to be highlighted. We all need to be reminded of all the stuff that we've done just to make it to where you are right now in the world. I think that's such an important part of the human experience.
Yeah, it's so important to tell the stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things off the beaten path.
So please keep listening and let us know what you think. Send us some comments, write us some reviews, follow us on the platforms. Buckle up, y'all. Stay tuned. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Sorry, not sorry I made you cry.
Right? Jesus.
Hey there. Thanks for listening and for getting and staying inspired to walk the path less traveled. You can help us build a crew of creative and unconventional folks by following and leaving a review. It takes about 30 seconds. It helps us work with the algorithm gods and to grow this baby. All right, until next time.